we're all surrounded by cyberspace. We know that. We're here every day working online. It's actually so big that nowadays, even the military is not splitting its territories only by the different continents on this globe, but they're also having the cyberspace as the 8th continent to take care of. And it's very, we're all affected basically by attacks that can happen. There are the bigger ones where, for example, a whole country has been, the government network has been brought down, or a whole power station during winter and in very cold countries has been brought down, and people were freezing and couldn't get water because the water pipes were frozen simply because of a cyber attack. There are many attacks which can basically attack bigger parts, but it can also affect all of us, each of us. We all had these funny emails already in our inboxes where others have warned us already, please don't open the attachment, don't click on the link, and so on and so forth. So with that actually being said, the most important part is we should all be very well educated about cybersecurity. And with that, we want to understand also what is really happening on the African continent and around. And therefore, we have invited tonight 3 fantastic speakers from a but some different perspectives. So we have Confidence Staveley. She is located in Nigeria, Lagos. And she is a cybersecurity professional. She's a cybersecurity awareness advocate. So very important, a global shaper, author, and entrepreneur. She has founded several initiatives already to bring awareness to cybersecurity, and is also has one of the many awards for Cybersecurity Woman of the Year 2021. As the second speaker, we have Christine Wambiru. She is in Kenya, in Nairobi. She is a cybersecurity consultant and also a manager at SheHacks Kenya. So here she is actually focusing on vulnerability assessments, on monitoring events, malware analysis, threat hunting and intelligence, and a lot more. So you'll have to tell us a bit more about all of these things. And last but not least, we have Kennedy Torkura. He is currently located in Potsdam in Germany. He's a cybersecurity researcher and cloud security engineer. So he will bring the academic part to this whole conversation. He spent over 10 years in cybersecurity and is very passionate about exploring the intersection of security chaos engineering. So Kennedy, you will definitely have to explain us a little bit more what all of this means. Therefore, I would like to open the stage to the 3 of you, and would like to start with Confidence. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what brought you to the field of cybersecurity, what you're currently doing in that field, and where you think it's what we have to urgently have to focus on at the moment?
Thank you so much, Saskia. That's a very broad question, and I hope I get to finish answering the question before we close the webinar today. But yeah, thank you for that really warm intro. And just to put it in a nutshell, I got into cyber out of curiosity, literally. It was a mistake and curiosity, let me put it that way, that got me in. I just wanted to find out what cryptography was about, because at that time when I was picking my electives during my my master's, my mates were a bit, my mates were going on about this particular module that was very, very difficult to pass, and that was cryptography. But the other modules that were available to me were were my comfort zone. And if anyone knows me, I don't do well in my comfort zone. I like challenges. They feed my adrenaline. It's like sitting on a power bike and just riding, that's sort of how it feels for me. So I'm like, there is no way I'm sitting here doing stuff that's so familiar. I need to get on something new, something that's going to get me cracking and wanting to learn more and challenge me. And so that's how I picked up cryptography, and I loved it there. It opened up the whole world of cyber to me, and it was just literally like interesting from then on, and I started stacking on more knowledge, certifications, experience going on my way. And then currently, so I had my mom almost become a victim of cyber fraud. So after that incident, I knew that I definitely wanted more. I wanted less and less people to have the experience she had. And of course, her having that experience also had its own third level impact on me as well. I didn't want people to have those experiences. And I feel like the best way to protect people wouldn't necessarily be, I mean, that's a side of things, like arresting people, that's definitely a side. But I think the strength in our actions will come from we being able to get the education required to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones. And loved ones need to understand how social engineering happens. We need to understand how social engineering happens. We need to know the importance of patching our softwares. We need to know the importance of choosing strong passwords and general cyber hygiene best practices. And that's why I set up Cyber Safe Foundation, where we're driving inclusive and safe digital access across Africa. So we're doing that, of course. Awareness is a side of things, and we're also doing upskilling a lot, because we also know that there's a deficiency in skill sets required, in the continent, and that's what we're really doing. So you see, this is why I said this question, I hope I get to finish it before the webinar is over. But yeah, that's in a nutshell is what I'm doing, and I'm really excited about the future of Africa in terms of cyber. And I believe that the next generation of really top talents in cyber will come from Africa. But that's a conversation we can have later on.
Absolutely. No, but I mean, obviously this is why ABAWT has come to life, is because there's so much potential, right, in Africa and on the whole continent, that we believe is not really properly shown in the so-called West, right? So that's why this format is here, why we bring people like you to the table to really show that there's so much more. And as I said to Christine when we had a conversation before, and said, in the Western world, how's Africa shown? You see the Sahara, you see some nice animals, go on safari, and and let's say the person that doesn't is not paying more attention to what is happening on the continent cannot imagine the multi-million cities, with so many people, and the amazing startups and ideas that are coming out of it, and all these technologies that are basically leapfrogging to newer heights that the Western world, the so-called developed world, as they like to say, is definitely behind, right? So that's why this is so important. So with that, Christine, why don't you share a little bit more about you and what brought you into this field?
Hi, thank you again for this opportunity. My name is Christine. Currently, I am a cybersecurity consultant. So basically what I do is offer solutions to clients, security solutions. So a client may come to me and I'll offer solutions based on their current implementations. For example, what do they exactly want to do? Do they want to secure their websites, applications, network? So depending on whatever they want, then I offer solutions for that, and I make sure that their network is secure. Apart from that, I am a content manager at SheHacks Kenya. SheHacks is basically a group of women. It was founded in 2016 by two amazing ladies. So SheHacks is basically a platform that brings and empowers women. We saw the gap in cybersecurity, especially for women in cybersecurity. I would say sometimes us as women, we tend to get into our own shell and don't want to explore more. So this was a great opportunity for us to bring it out for people so that ladies can also see that this is also your space. This is also something that you can take up on. So we use SheHacks for ladies to just have a platform to share their experiences every day in your workplace. You can basically share your experience and we learn from each other. How I got into cybersecurity, I think it is the same as confidence, curiosity. when I was in high school, I definitely loved computer science. But after I was done, I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I only knew I wanted something to do with computers. So I chose a course that is computer related. When I was in second year, I went for a conference, and this conference apparently was a cybersecurity conference. After listening to
Apparently.
conversations like this, like the one we are having right now, I just got a certain passion about it. So to date, I love explaining to my family how cybersecurity, explaining to my mom also. She was also a victim of cyber fraud, of the phishing mails and the calls. So yeah, explaining to her and just teaching her these things slowly by slowly is something that I am passionate about. Yeah.
Okay,
Basically,
fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. It's interesting, right? How very often we actually tend to start paying attention to areas and new fields and areas when we actually have a personal connection, right? It's always that. And I think that's why it is so important that we go out there and we stay curious and we always try to learn, because then we can build more personal connections and therefore more knowledge, right? And insights. So, and more knowledge and insights to Mr. Academy, Mr. Kennedy. Tell us a bit more about you.
Thank you for the new name you just gave me, Mr. Academy. Thank you.
I think I'm adopting that name as well, Mr. Academy.
Yeah, thank you very much. So firstly, thank you for bringing me on this platform. I really love what this platform is doing, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much. So my name is Kennedy Torkura, and I currently work at a company called Firebolt as a senior cloud security researcher. So my job there revolves around trying to see where there are security loopholes that are not covered by the security mechanisms and tools that might have been bought from vendors, because the cloud is relatively new and the threat landscape is evolving. Before then, I worked also in two other companies, one in Berlin, one in the US, which was actually a remote work. And before then, I was spent about 6 years or thereabout in academic research, studying for my PhD. So it's been a nice experience so far. And actually, I got into cyber security I would say it was at a point where I wanted to, so I had a bachelor's in computer science. And so after working for a while, I felt I needed to improve myself. I first tried to get some professional certifications, then the ones from Microsoft were quite popular. But I felt they weren't enough, because they were really theoretical, and I wanted something more hands-on, something more practical. And then I started looking around, and at that time there were also a couple of security events, security attacks. One of them was Stuxnet, which was very popular then. But anyways, so and then similar to the Confidence and Christine, I also had, and this time around, it wasn't my parents, it was me. Actually, what happened then was a hacker took over my Yahoo mail, kicked me out of the mail, and then started sending emails to all my friends, like my entire address book, requesting for money. I was not, I had traveled out, then it was like, oh, I'm here, I lost everything, please send money to this account. So it was like, so some people started calling me by phone, and I had to get across to the Yahoo team, and eventually they kind of recovered my email to me. And then I knew nothing about security. So those were part of the things that encouraged me. And then I went for an MSc in cybersecurity in the UK, and that was how I got into cybersecurity. My eyes just popped open when I started hearing a lot of things. I'm like, well, it's like I've been living in the Stone Age. Like my life changed a lot after then. And a lot of people were like the simple things like you're leaving, you don't have like, like you don't lock your mobile phone, and those kind of very simple habits. I started doing it, practicing it myself. And some of my friends felt it was like I'm becoming too private, conscious, like I'm trying to keep or hide so many things. I'm like, no, it's not about hiding stuff. It's like I'm trying to be a professional. I'm going to be talking to people about these things. I have to like practice it myself firstly, So that was how I got into cyber security. And then after then I decided to go to advance my studies to do a doctorate. And then so it's been a great journey so far. The field is expanding. There's a lot of interesting stuffs that are happening, a lot of interesting openings every day. We are always on the run, trying to learn new things, new attack tactics coming from everywhere. So it's a job that is very demanding, actually. So yeah, happy to talk about it more.
I can imagine. So what would you say the most common ones? What are the most common attacks, and that would be the second one. Second question is, what is the next trend that we actually should be aware of, so that we can be hopefully a step ahead of that? Who wants to take the question? Maybe the first one. What do you think is the most common most common attacks and threats that are happening right now, especially, let's say, it'll be more interesting, of course, to see what's happening in your area, in Kenya or in Nigeria. That would be great to understand.
Yeah, so I think I'm happy to go first. I mean, it's been very interesting over here in Nigeria, and I think West Africa, if I was to put it that way. We're seeing third-party supply chain attacks more frequently here. So for a lot of the attacks you've seen in the West, they've trickled down and hit maybe a lot of our critical infrastructure here. So I'll give an example. Kesaya Bridge affected a bank in Nigeria. So that's sort of this kind of scale of what we're seeing in terms of how these attacks really hit across the supply chain and trickles down to Nigeria. I mean, many miles away from where the target was. We also are seeing, increased social engineering attacks still. They are changing tactics, so they're also evolving around current events and challenges in Nigeria. So, for example, there's an increase in unemployment right now. So we also have social engineering attacks that are taking the style of unemployment, basically dealing with that side of things as well. So we're seeing that it's evolving and morphing into whatever it is at the time, at the current tides and events around the country. And it's the same as well for the rest of West Africa. We also have a lot of will I say hacking, if I was to put it that way, but what I really want to say is that we have business logic issues, we have man-in-the-middle attacks, we have attacks on our databases as well, a lot. So that's like core theft happening there. We have quite a lot of that happening. The challenge, however, in Nigeria is that we haven't exactly really developed and implemented our data protection policies in a way that mandates these organizations that suffer breaches to actually disclose them. We have a regulation, or we have a data protection regulation, but there is no part of that regulation, unlike the GDPR, that actually mandates them to declare that they've had this attack. So we've even had incidences where there is actual proof on the dark web. I mean, a company can come up and say, okay, this is a screenshot of what we found on the dark web for XYZ organization. And that same organization will have their PR team come out and respond and say, that's an absolute lie. In fact, that is just an attack on that person. I mean, there is proof, man, So those are the things we are facing here. And for us, really, what I would say the biggest issue is not even making sure that they report. It's even implementing what we have in terms of the data protection policies is an issue here. We also have very strongly malware, the general malware. So before now, in this part of the world, the most common malware was viruses. You know, now we're having other strains of malware. We're having ransomware. We're having a lot of banking trojans, very much. They just steal and scavenge for banking details and send off to attackers. So we're having quite a lot of that. And I would say we're also having a bit of distributed denial of service attacks as well. We're seeing that with you know, very mundane things like websites, you know, being bombarded with traffic and going offline. We saw that used as hacktivism during most of our major political events. So during the NSAS, I know NSAS hashtag trended across many parts of the world. I think it trended across the world anyway. So around that time, we had groups come in and just shut down websites of very major government establishments, and that was a DDoS as well. So we're seeing those strains of attacks and defacements of websites and all of that. Yeah.
Okay. And when it comes to the whole government attack, I mean, how our governments are reacting to that, especially in your case in Nigeria, of course, or West Africa. That'd be very interesting to see. Yeah?
Absolute denial. I mean, I would say that, to be very honest, it has gotten a bit better. So, for example, for major government establishments, so let's say the national agency that manages identity now has sort of like a cybersecurity team. So that's getting better. You know, so with those pockets, so with some organizations within government that hold very major roles, you know, they're sort of beginning to get their game together. But with a bigger percentage, they're very far cry from, say, the way the private sector has advanced. So in Nigeria, for example, the maturity level in terms of cybersecurity is different. So the private sector is way ahead. I'll give you an example. In the banking sector in Nigeria, the regulator, for example, has a structure and regulation around how data to be managed. And so much so that the CISO reports to the board directly. That's something that even in the West, in some part of the West, is still not achieved yet. But that governance that allows for the CISO to have good power, secure budgets to get their work done is achieved in the banking sector in Nigeria as we speak. But then Nigeria also has a very far cry from the private sector, has a far cry from a public sector in terms of maturity. So you see, it's varying across industries in the private sector, and it's varying within governments in terms of what kind of data is collected by the government agency and how big they are.
Okay. So when it comes to data protection, Christine mentioned that there is an implementation in Kenya on the policy, correct? Want to share a little bit more about that?
Our data data bill. It was introduced, I think, 5 years ago. So I will say that was a huge step for Kenya, since it was something we have been waiting for so long, because, for example, the government holds a lot of our data, and we have seen the government, for example, government websites being defaced just by mere script kiddies. So you just wonder, so if a website can be defaced just like that, so what happens to my data that you are holding in a database that I maybe don't know where? So what type of security are you implementing there? So the data protection bill was definitely a huge step for our government, and they even came up with a law whereby every organization has to have a data someone to protect the data, basically. So this person will be responsible in case of a data breach, in case of data leakage. This is the person who will be answerable to why is this happening. So at least this brought about a lot of responsibility in terms of how companies are handling our data. So you won't find companies just dishing out data as a plate of food on the internet. So at least we are improving, and I can say compared to 2, 3, 5 years ago, we are at a better place. We also have a national Kenya incident response team. So our incident response team is it's basically like a SOC. So it monitors events coming in nationwide 24/7, and it is responsible for reviewing everything, protecting, analyzing the events. So I think we are definitely doing better. Yeah.
So you would say there's not a PR team rolling out a denial campaign?
We definitely also face denial, especially when the government on this hand is saying, we have responsibility, we are holding your data pretty well. And on this other end, we can see the website is definitely defaced. So you ask a lot of questions, and for them, the straight out answer is denial. There is nothing better.
Okay, well, I don't think it's any different. Well, you know, every nation, every country handles.
Oh no, don't go there. you guys are you're slapping fines on organizations, and we can see this. I mean, it's a far cry, honestly. And let me give us an example of what I'm saying. So some people, even when we speak about privacy, it's this year we started having a lot of conversations. People are beginning to understand why privacy is a big thing. People are beginning to understand how their data, is valuable. I mean, people generally just throw around their data. It's not a big deal. So if you ask an average person on the street, okay, let me rephrase that. We did a survey. We took cameras and went on the streets of Lagos. I mean, Lagos is quite, I know you know a lot. Lagos is quite a big city and really, on the forefront of technology. So we took our cameras and went on the streets of streets of Yaba. Yaba is quite, it's also like the little a hub where you find a lot of tech startups. And we try to get people to tell us their passwords for their emails and tell us the pins for their ATMs because they had won something. Best believe we got over 70% of people on camera. I mean, one guy actually told us the password, and we're like, oh, that's such an easy password to crack. And he said, oh, but it's private. That's what it So it's very private. Yeah, so that's a very, very practical example that I have experienced. I mean, when we told our videographer we're going on the streets and we're going to do this, he was like, come on, Faye, confidence. No one is going to follow them. I'm like, okay, watch me and see. The guy got home and he was so dazed the whole day. He actually messaged me back and I'm like, yeah, because the average person doesn't exactly understand. I mean, for your email account, that's a roadway to your whole digital life, so people don't understand.
What a trust.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big deal, So, and I mean, we are still on the journey for the average netizen to understand the power of their credentials, why they should protect it, what they should put in place to protect their privacy and protect their data, and hold the regulators and everyone who collects their data accountable for duty of care, if I was put it that way.
Right. So the next one on that one would be, with the whole technology development, obviously a lot of startups or companies are being created that are probably also taking on the cybersecurity challenge. Kennedy, do you know of any of those companies? Do you know about the sector or maybe even the investment area? Oh, I hope I didn't. Did I break up? Should I repeat?
Yeah. Can you please repeat? I think you broke. I didn't get everything.
You see, German internet. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's not the best. Not the best.
So no, my question was, do you have any insights on if there is, but what type of investments are taking place, for example, in the cybersecurity field? Do you have any knowledge on that one?
I think I can talk a little bit from what I've seen. So in cybersecurity, most of the leading startups are coming from the US and from Israel. And from Israel, I think it's kind of logical because they have a high level of training in terms of the technology and the quality of training they give them during their compulsory military training. And over the years, we have seen a huge number of guys who leave the Israeli Defense Force, and they go straight into the market, and they are actually ahead of the market in terms of how much they know sophistication, what I've worked with. And I think there is also some sort of support from the government. So they just go in and they found startups, and also there is a great connection between Israel and San Francisco, like the Silicon Valley. So they have like a straight bridge across, beginning to speak with the Fortune 500 companies. And so we have seen companies who become unicorns in less than 24 months. Like unicorns are companies who have a valuation of at least $1 billion US dollars. And this is amazing. Like it's just beginning to happen. There's a company called Wiz. They became unicorns just within about 16 months, and it's an Israeli-based company. Obviously, these are not like first-time founders, they're like veteran founders. So it's, you know, but I think currently in the startup world, most of the venture capitalists are like focusing on food tech, you know, fintech, because those are the industries that really helped out or became more popular during the pandemic. Everybody is at home, they want food, they want to do their transactions, they cannot go to the bank. And these sectors have seen a large increase in funding in the last like 2 years or less than 2 years. Cybersecurity, I think, it's not at least in Germany, I know it's the funding is it's not as easy. It's the growth is not as much as what we see in the other sectors. And I think it's the same thing we're seeing in Africa. So we observed that in Africa also in the last 1 year, 2 years, there's been a lot, especially countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, South Africa. They call them like the Big Four. They have one acronym for them, but there's a lot of interest from external or investors from US, from everywhere, and they're pouring a lot of money into these companies. And usually most of them are fintechs, yeah, because they are like they are kind of putting a lot of work to make the banking sector much agile, you know, to make people to easily have access to the banks to do their transactions and so forth. And then we have seen a lot of interest in these companies, and there's a lot of growth. I haven't heard of cybersecurity, and I think in my own analysis, I think that it's going to take time. So I'm happy that Confidence already mentioned about all of these increase in cyber attacks. I'm not happy it's happening, but you know, cybersecurity is such an abstract subject that usually people put it as an afterthought. Like people learn by experience, which is not good. But you know, they want to be fined or they want to be hacked, and then they like begin to act after them. So I think maybe after the industry grows to a certain maturity level, and these attacks also like hype up, you know, people definitely will find ways of attacking even these startups. And then probably at that time, maybe guys are going to be motivated to also, you know, found startups, and maybe the investors also will see the need to also invest in such companies.
Yeah, human nature, right? You have to be a burnt child first. We have actually a good question here from, I hope, what kind of critical infrastructure are affected due to pandemic in terms of cybersecurity? For example, Invest, which was stopped by a company because of COVID, and major infrastructure got less funding. Who can take that question?
I think I can take it up. So what kind of critical infrastructure are affected? I would say databases. For example, banks right now are majorly affected due to the pandemic. They are targeted pretty much. Even in Kenya, we have banking trojans, ransomwares, even the basic phishing, social engineering affects banking systems. So I would say databases are most affected. What else? Websites, I would say websites, but also websites have databases in them. Applications have databases in them. So your database, I would say due to the pandemic, data has become the most valuable thing in the world right now. So we have seen so many cases, even LinkedIn being hacked, and the data has been collected, has been mined from LinkedIn, and they have been sold in the dark web. We even have platforms that can show you your email has been collected from LinkedIn. The scrapping that was happening on LinkedIn, it was collected. So you see how vulnerable you are. And this is why it is very important to secure your database. So for whatever infrastructure you are building, even your network, even a company, your users, you store your users' data in a database. I would say your database is the most critical infrastructure you will have in a company, and even personally, if you have anything, even Amazon, database is so important. So securing it is the first thing that we should definitely do, ensuring that it is not affected by anything like the OWASP. We have something like the OWASP top 10. So ensuring that it is not affected by that is something critical, because you may be fined greatly by the government, by laws, because of just not securing your database. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility. Sorry.
I just want to add to what Christine said. For us in Nigeria, a lot of our sectors are still not really digitized fully. So cyber attacks on those sectors are not such a big deal. But so, for example, the health sector is not there yet. But the information and communications technology sector was really hit by the adverse effects of COVID and how you tied on to cybersecurity. There was a spike in fake news. There was also a lot of websites that were brought down around that time and are still being brought down, that is affecting things. And I think also the education sector as well got really hit. I mean, because of COVID, a lot of people needed to rely on digital platforms to learn. A lot of schools got attacked, and their learning platforms were brought down as well. Some of them, their learning platforms were used to distribute pornography. So that was also a critical infrastructure that was hit, as concerns cybersecurity and COVID. So that's what I wanted to add. And then speaking to some of the things that Kennedy was saying around investments. So a lot of the cybersecurity investments made in Nigeria are compliance driven. So it's sort of like a stick in the hand kind of thing. You have to meet PCI DSS or ISO 27001, and then you have to then comply, to maybe get a license and then maintain that compliance, So, so a lot of the investments around cybersecurity are made in that regard. But we're beginning to see companies also coming to set up shop, providing say SOC as a service, for example. So getting those other parts of cybersecurity that can be repetitive and that can actually be outsourced safely. What do they call those people? There's a name for it. When you outsource a service in cyber, there's a name. It's skipping my mind. But basically, they're able to outsource those components. So components like threat intelligence is also outsourced. And then, the SOC also for many banks is outsourced to really trusted clients, across trusted vendors. So we're seeing, a lot of foreign companies coming to Nigeria to set up shop and invest in building talent, in building, putting the infrastructure to provide services. I think it's a business that's doing good
here. Okay. Sorry, Kennedy, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a little bit about the attacks that have been trending due to the pandemic. I guess one of them is ransomware. So basically, ransomware is an attack where attackers take over a specific resource, could be a database, could be a S3 bucket, could be even be a complete virtual machine. And they encrypt it, and they keep the encryption keys, meaning that the user has no access at all to that resource. And then their request for ransom could be to the tune of millions of dollars or euros or naira, whatever, usually something very high. And usually the attackers they don't do it just for anybody. They pick people who they know are capable of paying, because they also kind of wise. So at the end of the day, most people paid this money and then they either give them the keys back. And it turns out that sometimes they leave some kind of they leave some back doors. Okay.
I'll check what that is. Here we go. Amruda, could you mute yourself, please? We can hear you. Unfortunately, I can't.
Sorry.
No worries, Amruda.
Okay. Yeah, so I think ransomware has really increased. It has come back. There are some ransomware groups that went out of existence or were no longer active, and they are just coming back right now. I think it could be that now a lot of businesses are online. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of financial transactions, and they are now becoming a huge problem. And a lot of people are trying to tackle it. One of the high-profile ransomware attacks that happened recently was that of the Colonial Pipelines in the US, a Texas-based infrastructure. And it was so bad that the price of oil in the US kind of rose because they shut down the entire plant and there were shortages of fuel. And then, it was pretty bad. So, and it's happening in many sectors. Obviously, not everybody reports it. Some people just silently pay the ransom and they never tell anybody that they paid, and no one knows. So
yeah. Particularly this example I found quite interesting because I was looking for it because I remembered that it happened. I was looking for it and I was searching for an article on it and I couldn't find anything anymore on that type of attack. On that exact attack, actually. It was really interesting. So maybe that's kind of falling under the Nigerian style of it never happened and we're going to take all the articles down on that. So, but another question, like out of curiosity. So when websites are being taken down, you don't necessarily get an email saying, oh, we're going to bring your website up after you pay that. Sometimes you just don't get an information. It's just literally the website has been taken down. Why do people do that? Like, do you have a reason for that?
Yeah, there's definitely a reason. I mean, and it depends on what the attackers are trying to achieve. They could be using it to spread propaganda as well. We've seen that with, for example, the recent defacement of Donald Trump's website. So that's one. They could also be using to spread malware. There's this kind of attack that's called waterhole. So it sort of like helps them spread malware across, and so that could be the thing. So maybe everyone who visits that website could get a share of the rotten pie. So that could be one. It could also be taking it down to prove a point, for jokes. I mean, Christine was mentioning something around script kiddies. If you look at some of the code that's been executed when you're doing forensics after an event, you'll find that it's not even sophisticated. Because for most of the websites, we don't have the basic things put in place. We don't have a WAF, for example, on those websites. The passwords are poor. There are no two-factor authentication turned on for the admins. Someone can easily escalate privileges, so someone can register as a user and become an admin by just running short code. The forms on the website, for example, the inputs that you've gotten from those forms are not cleaned off. So someone can come in on your contact form and put in some code, and it's actually going to execute against your database. I mean, those are all basics to sort of put in place, but those basics are not there, and that really, really changes the trajectory. So I just feel like this is an opportunity to also say for everyone listening, go back to your life, to your business life, and look at the basics. Have you done the very basics to be secure? Because half the time, the people that are attacking are not that skilled. It's just because we have left the place of doing those really, really little basic things to keep ourselves secure.
Okay.
If I could also add, Confidence has said that it depends with the hacker, with the attacker's agenda, and I definitely agree with that because, for example, I can't just wake up one morning and deploy a ransomware at a startup company that I don't know about. That for me to do that, it requires me to do a lot of information gathering about this company. What do they do? What if I deploy such an attack, what will I gain from it? So it also has to, so agenda has a lot to do with this. And also the way she has said about the using the platform to perform other types of attack, that is also true. Because for example, if I'm here today, maybe minding my own business, and then I hear someone's website, maybe for example, the one for Donald Trump has been hijacked and has been defaced. Me as a curious human being, I'll go to the website and I'll visit it so as to see and have the information. You don't know, once you visit that website, you'll deploy a malware on your computer or on your phone, and you'll never know about it until someone comes to you and tells you, kindly pay me this amount of Bitcoin for me to give you back your phone, for me to give you back your email. So sometimes curiosity killed the cat.
Kills the cat. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, so
well, thanks for the insights. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to be really careful when it comes to such things. Yes, be curious, but also have that mindset of also being careful, because also for me, I could tell you, being in cybersecurity has taught me how to be really careful. I'm so cautious. Even going to a hotel and connecting to the Wi-Fi, I am so cautious. I'm usually like, what if I'm attacked? What if someone just wants to grab my password? So that conscious mindset, it's something that we all have to develop.
Absolutely. I have 2 questions now here in our chat. So I'm going to start out and then one of you can jump on it. So Levo, hello, welcome. Greetings from Berlin as well. So in the context of the greater Africa landscape as a continent, what are the cybersecurity frameworks and policies that would lead to better digital transformation across the continent, especially in view of high-level fintech across African terrain? So that's the first question. The second one will come to. Who wants to take that one? I think Kennedy, you've been talking about fintech before, so maybe you want to jump on that.
Okay, so the question is around how to improve cybersecurity in fintechs in Africa, right? Yeah, I think talking about Nigeria, I've seen some policies from the central bank, and the central bank has been trying a lot to regulate the industry because the industry is really disrupting and it's getting heated every day. And guys are doing a lot of things, including using, going into Bitcoins, making it possible for people to easily move transactions from, standard banks to Bitcoins or cryptocurrency. And the central bank and the government has been trying a lot to put in policies that will kind of regulate how these activities are being conducted. So obviously the government has a huge hand in understanding firstly what is happening and trying to give that direction to the companies, and to draw out exactly what it means to be secure. I think that is the starting point. The next point is like the government cannot do a lot. I think we already mentioned it in the end. I think Confidence mentioned that the banks are actually ahead of the government in terms of security or in terms of technology, and which is true, which is actually, I think that is everywhere in the world. In most cases, the private sector is always ahead because they do it for commercial purposes. They have the motivation, they gain from it. So it means that the private sector, they also have to understand exactly what the problems are and, define for themselves what is security, come up with guidelines, come up with hygiene, basic hygiene practices, and make those things to be easy to implement. Because we have seen where some of those guidelines are really difficult, and people struggle to implement them. We have seen things like ISO 27001, which is some kind of standards, for implementing some practices. But in the end, these are like tick boxes, and usually you find out that for you to achieve it, you spend a lot of money, because the consultants that you call in, because you cannot do it yourself. Usually, most companies don't have in-house personnel who will implement these policies, so they have to go out to hire consultants, and these consultants are usually very expensive. So, because of that, some companies don't even have the motivation to do it. And the government is just like, do this, and they're looking at what they will gain, how much they're going to commit to, achieving this regulation. So there needs to be a balance between, okay, what regulations, how you should achieve it, how much you should pay for it, what are the benefits, and all of this has to be looked at in a proper way, that the banks are motivated enough to be compliant, and also I think it's not just about being compliant. So that is always another misunderstanding. People sometimes think that, okay, if you have a certification, you are safe. It turns out that compliance and security are two different things. Usually compliance are just a set of tick boxes. Someone comes, says, okay, you're good to go, right? And the next day, people just fold their hands. I've worked in companies that before the compliance, everybody puts in his best, and the moment they give them the badge or whatever, the pass mark, everybody just opens the doors. And that is where security comes in. Security is continuous. So it goes up. I think the best way to put it is they have to develop a culture for security. It's something that has to be embedded in them, and it's usually not so easy. It's something that has to be done in a very intentional way and in a very strategic and with a nice methodology. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, Confidence. You want to say something? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that just to, I really agree a lot with what a lot of things Kennedy has said, but just to maybe create some sort of balance, given that a lot of organizations, for example, are coming from zero. And in line with the question that was asked around which method, like which framework, I would say that it would really depend on the sector. So for some sectors, PCI DSS is a must-have. And if you don't have PCI DSS, you're a joker, literally. So it depends on the sector. And that would depend on what's mandatory for you. But I want to just put out that those standards are a good place to start from. So they're a good place to start from on the journey to attaining cyber resilience, which should be where all of us should be going to. And then speaking about, the high level of fintechs proliferation across the African continent and how cybersecurity plays a role, I think we need to really move away from thinking about cybersecurity as just a cost center. But when we begin to think of cybersecurity as a business enabler that allows us to actually make more money, we see the investments differently. And I'll give you an example. I was sitting with two CISOs 2 weekends ago, and one of the CISOs I was sitting with is the Chief Information Security Officer of one of the biggest banks in Africa. I wouldn't say Nigeria, because they're also very strong around other countries in Africa, and they're looking to move to other parts of the world. So they're moving, and having a lot of branches outside of Africa. And I'm not going to say the gender, because if I say the gender, you might be able to narrow it down to who I was with. So the sister was like, oh my God, that they're putting so much strain on I was putting too much strain on this person, to sort of really, really tighten up their strategy and everything. And so in that moment, I remembered once again that when you invest in cybersecurity, your business is then positioned to make more money, because then you can then show that I can hold your data, hold it responsibly, I can keep this thing safe, I can guarantee the CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data, which is the basic thing that cybersecurity exists for. So if we begin to see cybersecurity as that enabler that helps our businesses make more money, and begin to see compliance as a place to start off from, that would help with quite a lot of things across the continent.
Absolutely. It's also more a sustainable approach, right? Instead of always reacting. towards something that will, at the end of the day, cost you even probably more money, right? So, or your business or your government. So we have I'm going to ask this one more question out of the chat, and then we're actually running out of time. I think we're going a little bit over, but we're going to try to keep it short. So Mario here is asking whether junior developers are aware of basic security issues are there and how to prevent them in university. I haven't taken a class on that one, but I assume they are being taught that.
Maybe I can.
That's difficult to tell, but Kristen, go ahead. I mean, where are we with DevSecOps in Kenya?
We are nowhere. We are not even close to 2%. But I would say, first of all, security is not taken seriously or treated seriously in schools generally. Even in universities, you'll go study computer science and all you'll know is how to develop. You'll learn C, you learn a programming language, Java, C, Python, but you'll never be told this is how you're supposed to code. These are the basics of coding to ensure security is implemented in your coding. You will never be taught that. It is either out of your own curiosity, you learn that, or you learn it the hard way in a company. It is not treated seriously, and I think it is about time we do, because I believe most developers face it rough, especially in companies that have taken up cybersecurity very seriously. Even as Confidence has said, when it comes to DevSecOps, we are nowhere. We are not even close. Of which DevSecOps is just ensuring that between development and operations, before our application goes to the operation side or goes live, that we have implemented security from the get-go. From the time we are thinking about this application, from the time we are designing this application, we are supposed to think about how are security measures going to be implemented in this coding? How are security measures going to be implemented in our application or in our website? That is basically what we should be learning in universities, but unfortunately we are not anywhere close.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. So I have so many more questions, but we do have to keep it short and not overrun for like 2-3 hours. So okay, I know all the three of you are going to be like, Saskia, this is such a wide area of question again. How are we supposed to answer that? But what do you think is going to be the trend? I'm not even going to go as far as 10 years, but let's say 5 years, 3 years. What is going to be the trend? Where do you think we in the world have to pay attention to on cybersecurity? And I see Kennedy is like in the starting position of talking about this.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I think it's going to help maybe 1 or 2 people in the audience in probably making decisions. And I'm going to be a little bit biased in answering, because I work in cloud computing, and but I think it's kind of real, because so the cloud has become the operating system for like a digital transformation. It is the key driver for most of the disruptive technologies we're seeing today. On the flip side, we are also seeing that there is a lot of attention from the hackers, to attack cloud-based services. So there is this huge gap for people who firstly understand what cloud computing is in the first place, and then for people who can actually, come in and secure these, resources that are in the cloud. So I think it's an area that is still very new, and it's going to grow over time. And the second one, maybe I can just mention, is like in the context of IoTs, Internet of Things. Now the things are everywhere. We have smart homes, we have smart everything. Everything is becoming smart now. So in the end, all this smartness is based on some little computers that are everywhere, and these little computers become targets for people to, become entry points for hackers to easily from there gain access to whatever. So they can get access to these small things, and from there they can work their way to their target, which usually is something about financial, money or something like that. So probably these two areas I think are going to be really going to be very huge in the next 5 to 10 years.
Fantastic. I see Rachel, she says that the future of cybersecurity is an AI-enhanced security system, which is great actually, because I just posted a link to our next event, which is all about artificial intelligence in Africa. So thank you very much for that bridge, Rachel. But confidence, I'm sure you also have something to say about
Rachel read my mind, absolutely. And I was going to share that to also really share what the opportunities are, because when we think about cyber and we see how much automation will begin to come in, people always feel, oh, there'll be lots of jobs, but I strongly believe also that there will be a strong opportunity for people who know how to build strategy around these tools, know how to ensure the tools are talking to themselves, know how to make sure that the tools are not being bypassed. I mean, we've seen really sophisticated APT attacks that can sort of hide in the system. So that is where those are the opportunities that will still abound. And again, the IoT attack surface will continue to widen. I think it will sporadically widen in Africa in the next 2 years. So it's important that we're able to begin to think about how are we going to adopt this technology, but adopt it safely? How do we position ourselves as cybersecurity professionals to be able to advise on policy, to be able to protect the devices that are in our enterprises and are in our networks?
Okay. So Christine, what are your thoughts on this one as a almost last word on this event?
I totally agree with Kennedy and confidence. We also, I believe 5 to 10 years ago, we said computers will come and take away all our jobs, but here we are. We have jobs. We are trying to ensure these computers are safe. So with the more we advance our technology as a continent, as a world, the more we do it, the more we see the gaps that are there. So the more the gaps that we are seeing, the more the jobs. So for example, when it comes to any technology, cybersecurity should be at the center of it all. I mean, how will I build an AI and the next 2 minutes a script kiddie comes up and just takes control of it? That will be a shame, a really big shame. So I would say this is why we try push cybersecurity. This is why we do cybersecurity awareness, so that you understand that at the peak of it all, even when you're on your Instagram page, cybersecurity should be at the center of your mind.
Oh, absolutely. I also had the experience of one of my accounts being taken over by some Russians. So all of a sudden, everything was in Cyrillic language. No idea. So yes. Well, with that being said, I would say, because we already ran over the time a little bit, I would like to bring this conversation to an end.